We'll call the meeting to order for the Wicomico County Council Legislative Session 2019-03 for February 5th, 2019. Those that like to stand and join us in the Lord's Prayer and Pledge of Allegiance, please do. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, as we forgive our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Entertain a motion from council to approve legislative minutes from January 15th, 2019.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion or corrections? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Minutes are approved. Entertain a motion to approve the the work session minutes from December 18th, 2018.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion or corrections? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Minutes are approved. Entertain a motion to approve the work session minutes from January 2nd, 2019 in reference to capital improvement program.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion or corrections? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Minutes are approved. Entertain a motion to approve the work session minutes from January 2nd, 2019 in reference to the capital improvement program in regard to the airport.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any corrections? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Minutes are approved. Good evening, Mrs. Hurley.
Good evening, Mr. President, council members, ladies and gentlemen. The first item on the agenda this evening is a public hearing on the capital improvement program for the county for the period July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2024, and the capital budget for fiscal year 20. A public notice was published in the Daily Times as well as posted on the county's website indicating that a public hearing would be held this evening at 6 p.m. Mr. President, with your permission, I'll read each department and the project total through fiscal year 24, if that's okay.
Okay, that's fine. Were we going to put this screen up and have any of this on the screen, or?
I do have handouts on the table,
Okay.
but we did not put it on the
Okay.
projector for this
All right.
evening.
That should suffice.
Okay, starting with, did you want to open the floor for public hearing?
Thank you. At this time, we open the floor for a public hearing on the capital improvement program for the county. The individual departments will be reviewed as Ms. Hurley just stated. Thank you.
Starting with general services, that's $1,615,500. Information technology is $107,750. Sheriff's office is $11,104,000. Department of Corrections is $2,935,000. Department of Public Works Engineering Division is $8,672,924,000. Department of Public Works Roads Division is $5,065,000. Department of Public Works Solid Waste Division is $7,585,000. Board of Education is $91,353,000. Warwick Community College, $35,728,276. Public Library is $4,850,000. Health Department is $857,000. Salisbury Ocean City Wicomico Airport, $64,007,500. Recreation Parks and Tourism, $4,447,500, and contingency of $1 million. And again, these are totals for or through fiscal year 2024.
Okay. Is there anybody that has any questions or concerns that would like to, in reference to the capital improvement program? Do please come to the podium, state your name, your county of residence, and your concerns. Mr. Ford, good evening.
Good evening, Council President Cannon and council members. My name is Bruce Ford. I'm the Chief Finance and Operations Officer for the Wicomico County Public School System. And on behalf of our superintendent, Dr. Donna Hanlon, I would like to express our gratitude for the county council's past support for our capital requests, and ask this evening that you support the fiscal year 2020 capital improvement plan as submitted by our county executive, Mr. Bob Culver. We would like to thank Mr. Culver and his staff for meeting with us numerous times and numerous occasions to review our priorities and to listen to our justifications to support our CIP requests. Our top 3 requests for the fiscal year 2020 component of the 5-year plan are recommended by Mr. Culver for full funding in this budget that you have received. And those 3 requests total for fiscal year 2020, $9,991,000. And they consist of the top 3 priorities as follows. Beaver Run Elementary School replacement school for $9 million. This request, our first annual request over a multiple year request. Total project is estimated to be in the neighborhood of about $50 million, but that's an early estimate. Second request in the FY20 request is the Mardella Middle High School, $700,000 to cover costs associated with studies and planning for options to address the many systemic and architectural issues that have been identified at the school. And our third request, Westside Intermediate School, $291,000 for a major roof replacement at that school. As mentioned, these 3 top priorities for the board total $9,991,000. We respectfully ask that the county council support the county executive's request to fully fund these top 3 priorities. And we thank you for your consideration and look forward to working with the county executive and county council to make these 3 priorities a reality for our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Any other public comments in reference to the capital improvement program?
Good evening. Name is Pete Peterman, Hebron, Maryland. I'm here to thank the councilman for the past funding that you've given Mardella High School for their track and field project, and ask that you do support the CIP funding for the 2020 fiscal year coming up. Mardella is basically a school filled with Band-Aids right now. We're at 8 portables. We're right to the hilt. So the funding would come in handy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is William Houlihan. I reside in Wicomico County. I have 2 children at Westside Intermediate School. I want to thank County Executive Mr. Culver for recommending the roof replacement funding, and I thank you tonight for your consideration.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Kurt Twilley. I'm the principal of Beaver Run Elementary School, a resident of Wicomico County. I just wanted to come up and reemphasize what Mr. Ford has also addressed, and that is the council's consideration for Mr. Culver's full funding of the Beaver Run project. The school is in major need of replacement. Mr. Culver has been there and has personally toured the building along with the state comptroller, and he is in major support of having this project go forward, and I would also respectfully ask for your consideration for the funding requested to make this project happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Seeing none, that concludes the public hearing on the capital improvement plan for 2020. Mrs. Hurley?
Next on the agenda is a public hearing on resolution number 41, 2019, to amend the fiscal years 2019-2023 capital improvement program and capital budget to include grant funding in the amount of $2,934 from the Lower Eastern Shore Heritage Council for the Department of Recreation, Parks, and Tourism's project titled Pirates Wharf Master Plan and Park Development. A public hearing notice was published in the Daily Times as well as posted on the county's website, indicating that a public hearing will be held this evening at 6 p.m.
Thank you. This time we open the floor for public hearing on resolution number 41-2019. If you have any comments you'd like to make, please come to the podium, state your name, your county of residence, and your concerns. That concludes the public hearing on resolution number 41-2019. Entertain a motion from council to approve resolution 41-2019.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those, yes, I'm sorry.
If we could have,
Steve Miller?
yeah, if we could have Mr. Miller, I guess we hit it a
Sure.
couple times, but yeah, if we could, I just have a question about,
Mhm.
Did you forget his name?
yeah, I was making sure we're on the right thing, because I know we have two of them, so,
My name's Steve.
yeah, thank you, Steve.
Tell us.
It's Miller time.
Steve Miller, Director of Recreation, Parks, and Tourism for the county.
All right, thank you.
That's for you, Mark.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, thank you. So, can we just have an update on how the process is and when you expect the kind of master plan to be done and when the public could possibly see that? I've received some questions.
Yeah, it's gone very well. So we have a meeting next week with MDE and the Army Corps to hopefully address the boat ramp issue. That's going to certainly impact what we do at the park. The plan itself is inching along. I think this spring we should have something that the public can see and react to and respond to, and there'll be time to adjust that. And then in terms of the grant that we're referencing tonight for history, we're hopeful in the month of February that our consultant can give we'll probably do a public presentation for folks that are interested in the history of the park and that story that we'd like to tell through interpretive signage. We're hoping later this month to be able to have some type of public hearing where folks can just learn about that. So there'll be multiple opportunities, and it's going well, and we're moving along.
So you think maybe late March, early April for the master plan for the public to kind of, give some rough ideas?
Yeah, some of it's hard to predict. I would say more April
Okay.
or thereafter, but we're hopeful by June to have it completed, which would include multiple opportunities for the public to interact. So,
Appreciate that.
Any other questions? All right. Seeing none, all those in favor of resolution 41-2019, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried, resolution passes. Thanks.
Next is resolution number 42, 2019, authorizing the county executive to accept a grant award from the Lower Eastern Shore Heritage Council in the amount of $2,934 for the Pirates Wharf Plan and Park Development Project. So the first resolution was to amend the capital improvement plan. This resolution is to accept the grant funds into the county's finance system, just to clarify the two different resolutions.
Entertain a motion from council to approve resolution 42-2019.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried, resolution passes.
Okay, the next item for business is resolution number 43, 2019, confirming the appointment of Paul Butler Jr. to the Wicomico County Recreation and Parks Commission. The Recreation and Parks Commission acts in an advisory capacity to the Director of Recreation, Parks, and Tourism on all matters concerning comprehensive planning, policy interpretation, budgeting, operations, maintenance, capital improvements, as well as the formulation of plans and policies for public recreation, the establishment of recreation programs, and the creation of recreation policies.
Entertain a motion from council to approve resolution 43-2019.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried, resolution passes.
Mr. President, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mrs. Hurley. Good evening, Mr. Hitchens.
Good evening. Call your attention to Resolution 44, 2019, to the Department of Corrections Time and Motions Report.
Entertain a motion from council to approve resolution 44-2019.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion.
Thank you, Mr. President. We performed a study of staffing levels of transporters at the DOC. Management believes a shortage of transporters may exist and asked us to help quantify the shortage if there is one. Transporting inmates outside the facility is an intricate process, which typically requires 2 officers, one of which is armed. Many of the transports are scheduled in advance. However, there are circumstances where management has to draft other officers for coverage, such as a medical emergency. The DOC has 4 dedicated officers for transport. We reviewed all of the logs for the 3rd quarter of calendar year 2018, and we found that the average officer was able to cover 323 hours of transport service during the 90-day period, and there was a shortfall of 667 hours. In the sample, we analyzed what an additional officer would have been able to cover, and that was 317 hours. We didn't offer a recommendation or projection for future demand. Management should use our report in conjunction with their expertise of the industry to determine their transportation needs. We would like to thank management and staff at the DOC for all of their assistance in this study, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from council?
I thought it was a rather informative report. I thought it was, came to some very interesting conclusions. I was wondering if, in the process of this, whether it was suggested from the Department of Corrections as to whether or not they're planning to address this in the upcoming budget cycle.
That's our hope, sir.
You can come up here.
Okay. If you'd like to come up, that'd be great.
I have a question.
Yeah, now
You're not in trouble.
no. If you could state for the public your name and position, thanks.
Ruth Colburn, Warden, Wicomico County Department of Corrections.
Okay, glad to have you here. Appreciate you coming. Yeah, I was just wondering, because I thought this was pretty conclusive, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
What I didn't want to do was rely on, a lot of times people are like, oh, we're so short, we're so short, we're so short, and after a while, you sort of get tired of hearing the same story. So what I wanted to find out was, are we?
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to really do that is to actually break the hours down, break the mileage down, break the dedicated officers down, and then look at what is covered and what isn't, and do it in a more scientific way. And I want to commend the auditors. They went right in there and grabbed the bull by the horns, and I had I had an opinion, but I had no influence one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the conclusion was the conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, to me, a fairly conclusive finding.
Right, right.
For the record, what kind of transports are we doing that often?
We transport back and forth to district and circuit court. We have inmates housed in different facilities because they're separated at the request of the state's attorney or at the request of the court because they're co-defendants or one of them's a witness against the other. We have routine medical transports. For example, we have a person on dialysis, so 3 times a week they have to go to Deer's Head for hemodialysis treatment. We have routine transports for other medical needs. For example, an inmate that comes in with a bum leg and needs to go to an orthopedic surgeon. And then we have the emergency transports, things that are unforeseen, or the last-minute docket entry on the court, which no one foresaw because Jimmy Jones is now needed for court. And then transports to the hospital for someone who requires emergency treatment for chest pains, difficulty.
You don't call the ambulance?
We do, but an officer has to come in.
Respond.
Yes.
Okay.
Someone has to ride in the back of the ambulance, and then a chase vehicle has to go, because we need someone who's armed to be there. Yes, sir.
Bill?
Do you have, getting back to Mr. Cannon's question, do you have in your budget a request for that 5th full-time transport person?
Yes.
Okay.
Joe?
As a result of the audit, did you find anything in there that you could do to improve the functions any? Anything you picked up on individually or anything?
need to dedicate probably another officer to that, but that would take it away from shift. What we actually are working on the circuit court now is, instead of going down there to post bond and transporting the inmates, is to actually fax the paperwork back and forth, so we can avoid that part of the transport. Or if they have to go down to circuit court for some reason other than to appear in court, to have papers served on them or something like that, to do it via fax. And we're working that out with, and bless his heart, I've forgotten his name, Bo. I don't remember his last name.
McAllister.
That's
There you
it,
go.
bless his heart. So we're working that out to try and cut down on the transports that are going down there. That's not a very large fraction, but it's something that we can do.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting how the medical, I hadn't thought of it, but of course it made so much sense that the medical requires more assistance or more supervision. Because if you're taking them to the courthouse, there's a lot of other,
There's a lot of other,
there's a lot of
yes, sir.
assistance at the courthouse, but not at the hospital.
Yes, sir.
That's very,
Is there a lot of video technology used for court interaction or whatever between the inmates at the
We
jail?
do bail reviews using video bail review with both district and circuit court. As with all technology, when that fails, we have to actually transport them in person. And that doesn't, when they have to go to court, we don't have video court yet. So the transports have to happen when they have the actual trial.
Who does the pickup of prisoners that were picked up in another jurisdiction on
Sheriff's
a warrant? The sheriff's does that?
Sheriff's Department, yes, sir.
Okay, so you guys were never involved in that?
No, sir.
Okay.
Well, we appreciate your coordination with the internal auditors and the assistants, because as you said, that really is their function, is to help all the departments in Wicomico County function more efficiently. I think in many cases, they're perceived as the guys that are going to come in and, ruin your day, but
And that could have happened. I've been like, oh, you've got one too many transport officers, and then you know what, I would have had to eat that.
right. But I think they always do a fair evaluation
Absolutely.
of all the departments, so we appreciate your work, your
I was
kind
very
words there.
impressed, and I want to thank them again, that even if it had come out and they said, oh, you got too many people and you just staff better, it would have still been fair because they were extremely thorough.
Pretty good.
Or she will have locked us up.
Absolutely, but I would have given you an extra tray.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of Resolution 44-2019, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried, resolution passes. Thank you.
Thank you
Director
all very
Colburn.
much.
Thank you.
Mr. Hitchens, I assume that's everything you have for the night.
That is it. Thank you,
All right,
Council.
thank you very much.
Council President.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor, good evening.
Good evening. On tonight's agenda, one item, Legislative Bill 2018-05, Amendment Number 2. It was introduced December 18, 2018, by the President of the Council at the request of the Council Executive. It's an act to amend and transfer the appropriation from estimated contribution to fund balance account and the use of prior year funds balance account to solid waste enterprise fund, Cell 9 construction project account in the annual budget for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2019. And I understand that Mr. Weston Young and Mr. Dallas Baker are here tonight to address this.
Entertain a motion from council to approve Legislative Bill 2018-05, Amendment Number 2.
So moved.
Second.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Weston Young, Assistant Director of Administration.
Dallas Baker, Director of Public Works.
Thomas Ramsey, Principal for Geosyntec Consultants.
County Attorney.
Just to get everybody back up to speed, where it's been a little while, Cell 9 out at the landfill is currently under construction. It was designed by Geosyntec, who's been our solid waste consultant for some time. Change order was presented to council previously in regards to an underestimation of needed structural fill to build the new cell. To clarify the point, the design and the plans were correct, but the error was in the bid tabulation that went out. So the consultants that bid on the document bid on a smaller amount than what we needed to build the landfill. This was something we always needed, that soil to build. and it just wasn't included in the bidding process. So we're coming before you for additional money to cover that soil. This money that's being requested is within solid waste's unreserved fund balance, so they have the money. Solid waste, just for clarification, is an enterprise fund, so this isn't a request from the general fund. This is money that they've acquired through tipping fees and the household refuse permit, affectionately called the dump sticker. So it's money from solid waste to go to their project. And again, this is to pay for soil that is needed to complete the project. I'll be glad to talk about, as part of this, there was a time delay. A part of it was the extension needed to acquire and place the additional soil. A larger part of it was due to inclement weather, which Dallas presents frequently with his stormwater updates. He touches on the rain. It's really hard to compact structural fill and clay when we've had heavy rains. Staff feels the time extension is warranted. Some background on Geosyntec. They've been our solid waste consultant over 30 years. To date, as far as I can tell, this is the first mistake of this nature, and it's the first I've ever known of. To make amends, Geosyntec, and it was included in the previous packet, offered a 10% discount on services until the end of calendar year 2023. The original proposal included a broad indemnification in return for this discount. And to date, nothing's been agreed to or signed. Just for the record, we shared that because we're on a time crunch, and we gave council everything we needed, hoping to get a vote back on January 15th. After discussions with Geosyntec about our mutual concerns with the broad indemnification, it has been revised to, reduce the release from liability strictly to cover bid quantities. So we feel that this is acceptable. We tried to quantify the discount that we receive if we accept a 10% discount for the next essentially 4.5 years. We average about $175,000 worth of work more when we're designing a cell. It varies because sometimes MDE has additional regulations or requirements we need to fix, such as gas or groundwater issues or perceived issues. And we're looking at, over that period to the end of year 2023, approximately a $80,000 benefit from the 10% discount. So in closing, we're asking for a positive vote on this legislative bill. The transfer, this bill transfers money that solid waste already has for a project to acquire soil that they need to complete the cell. Again, the structural fill was only left out in the bid documents. The design, the plans had the actual amount needed on there. And given our history with Geosyntec and great working relationship, we feel, this error and their proposed remediation is fair. The last thing I'll mention is that further delays to this project put us in, I'll say, uncharted territory where we would possibly have to start shipping trash outside of the county. Preliminary numbers on that, looking at Worcester or, say, cheaper landfills in Pennsylvania but increased trucking costs, we're looking at a cost of about $800,000 a month to act more as a transfer station, and that was per month. So we're looking at severe cost if the cell doesn't get built. So again, what we're asking for is approval to transfer this money to cover the additional soil.
I thought we were taking trash from other jurisdictions.
By permit, we're not. If a private company is bringing trash into us, we don't know that. But per our permit with the state, and Tom can correct me if I'm wrong, we're not allowed to take it without state approval. So we would also need state approval to take it to Worcester or take it elsewhere. And there's a cost inherent with that permitting process.
Questions? Use your mic, Joe.
I have, you talk about the bids.
Use your mic, Joe.
When you're talking about the bid quantification.
Yeah, the
Explain
quantity. So
explain that for me.
yes, so depending on, and you can go on purchasing's website and see the different things. Sometimes we're bidding just a simple service, but on projects that are bigger like this, we put the actual quantities. So we will say we need 100,000 cubic yards of structural fill that meet certain criteria. We need 50,000 cubic yards of clay that meet certain permeability standards. We need so much square foot of, say, liner, geomembrane. We may need, silt fence, erosion sediment control. You can break it down. So this was, when it said how much soil we need, the contractor who's building the cell, which is Adel Construction, they bid a price per cubic yard of material. Well, that amount that we put on there was too low. Now, all the bidders that bid on that smaller amount. So we're not in a situation where somebody could say, well, I would have changed things differently had I known. It was just, to like simplify it, if we were saying, somebody bid on providing 5 SUVs to the county, but in reality we meant 50, that's where we would be coming back and saying, there's 45 more vehicles we need. So that's trying to simplify it, but the quantity of soil in this bid tabulation was too low.
I understand that.
Okay.
You say that they still want some release of liability, correct?
Yes, for further, I can read you the specific language.
It's on the quantities in the bid tab itself.
Well, this bothers me because, this was a mistake that was made, and it's an honest mistake from what I'm understanding.
Yes.
It happens. But you say you'll save $80,000 if they give us this discount over the next few years. But being released from liability, if there's another mistake made on their part, could cost us a lot more than that at some point in time. So a release of liability for just $80,000 in the projects, in the amount of projects that they do and the size that they do, I think is not enough of a give there, so.
I understand. I think our standpoint is what we're asking the amount transferred to increase the cost of construction. That was the cost that it was meant to be. So we haven't really lost anything other than a little bit of time, and we've lost more time due to weather, to be frank.
Maybe maybe I don't understand or I'm not being clear.
Yeah, the release that we've offered is for the bid quantities for cell 9 only. No other project.
No other project.
Just the remainder of this project.
But couldn't there be a mistake that would cost us a lot more than $80,000?
In theory, yes, that's possible, but where we are in the project right now, the remaining pieces that are left are essentially the installation of the geosynthetic materials that finish up the liner, the protective cover, and those are really the last of the major items, and they're already, the quantities on that are set and well-known.
So how long will this release of liability be good for, and how long will this discount be good for?
The discount goes until the end of the 2023. The liability ends when, the release of liability ends when the project ends.
Okay, so why is that different? Because you say it's only for cell 9. Why would that discount be any good?
Well,
if it's only for cell 9?
No, the discount is for all work that we're
All
doing
work.
for the county through
Correct.
2023.
Yeah, we wouldn't want to extend the liability past this project,
Yeah.
or release from liability, rather.
Well, couldn't there be another mistake somewhere along the line that would cost us a lot more than $80,000? What?
Yes.
For one thing, if you're doing good work, right, and you always have, why would you want a release of liability?
Because, yeah, Because that's the best I could get out of my corporate attorney, and I'm just,
And it's
That's
just,
what it is.
it's just
Yeah.
for the project at hand, that's mostly
Well, we
done.
understand that,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
We think it's a good idea. We think it's fair, all things considered.
You know, it's kind of equated to going and buying a car, and I'm saying, well, it's a great car, and if you want to buy it for this, we'll sell it to you with no warranty, but, you know, so I just see that that's, releasing liability is, it's a slippery slope. You know, it's a gamble, I guess you would call it.
Yes, to
It's
say
what
the
it is.
least.
So, I don't have a problem with giving you the money to get to the dirt. I know you're up against the wall. I think, you know, maybe we should move forward on that, but, I have issues. I don't know if the
Understood.
rest of the council might not.
This is change order number 4. What were the other 3 change orders?
there were several of them. They related to, mostly small fittings related to the gas well.
I mean, expense-wise.
I don't believe any of them were over $5,000. There were 3 of them. One was like a 2, one was a 3, and I think another was a 5. No.
There was
I
also
can
a
get you that
credit.
information.
Can you touch on the credit, because
Yeah, there was a credit for, I believe it was change order 5, which was the contractor had the option to use either the clay that we have on site or called a GCL, a geocomposite liner. Basically, you can have 2 foot of clay, or you can have, a foot of clay and this GCL, this geosynthetic liner. There was either one of those 2 options. Both are acceptable to MDE. We asked for alternate bids on both, if you would build it with the clay that we have, or would you build it with the clay and the GCL. They chose the option of the 2 foot of clay, but they did, actually, no, originally they provided the bid with the GCL. And when, by eliminating the GCL and going with the clay that we had, we saved money. We saved about $80,000, I believe.
No, it was more like about $180,000.
$180,000, I apologize.
We had purposely set up the bid to allow these 2 different alternates with the expectation that the original budget was based on the more conservative of the 2 from a financial standpoint, because it really depended on the quality of the clay that we were able to find on site. Once the project was awarded and we started, the contractor went out and got samples of that clay. We tested it. It met the better criteria we needed, so we were able to go with the second alternate, which was about $180,000 less than what the original bid was.
And for some reason, I was thinking we had agreed to do the, or you all had agreed to do the liner because it was a better option or safer. It wouldn't leak.
Well, I mean, both liner systems involve a geomembrane, and then there is a low permeability soil that goes underneath it, so the 2 of those are together. For that low permeability soil, the state of Maryland allows 2 alternates. One is this bentonite mat. It's a very low permeability manufactured clay liner that then has another layer of soil underneath it with a higher permeability, or you can do the entire thickness at a lower permeability, and that just depends on the quality of the clay. And the site has the higher quality clay, so we went with the lower permeability clay.
And that, just to be clear, that GCL is different than what I'll call the plastic liner that still goes in the bottom of the fill. You know, so we have the 2 layers of clay, then there's the plastic layer that we saw in the presentation.
So that's what you demonstrated at the hearing.
Exactly. That liner is still in,
So
that's
that's
required by the
Gotcha.
state. This is something separate.
Mr. Ramsey, I mean, the only forum we have is a public forum, so I don't want to put you on the spot, but sometimes we have to. The change order is being requested because of a 35% difference. And I was really curious as to how there can be an underestimated amount by such a large degree of 35%.
The mistake was made when we were doing quantity estimation for a project. You've got AutoCAD software that is used to calculate volumes based on the existing topography before construction and then where you're going to build it as part of the cell construction. That the accuracy of that depends on the limits that you take to calculate the volume. And there was, the limits that were taken did not include some edges of the cell where there was a significant amount of fill. Because if you've been out there, the cell is much higher than the existing ground. So there's a big slope that has to tie into the existing ground, and it was the volume of that slope that was omitted in the calculation.
Joe?
Is there any history of us releasing liability on anything before?
I'll pass that over to Paul.
Thanks, Weston.
Make him earn his keep.
I would say releases of liability are unusual, not unheard of, but unusual. From talking with Dallas, and Dallas, you correct me if I'm wrong, as I understand it, the quantities are at least 2/3 already installed.
Correct.
In this. So the remaining quantities that we would be addressing on liability would be the remaining third of quantities. And I think both Geosyntec and Public Works have looked at those very closely.
Well, it kind of bothers me to think that you would get 2/3 of the way through this project, and for some reason or another, was there something done, something bid wrong again that would make the company want to have a release of liability? That there was some kind of a risk that was going to, and we don't know what it is. If you did, you would be telling us about it. But is there some kind of risk somewhere that somebody's recognized why Geosyntec would want a release of liability? And say, I'm not trying to put you on the spot because this is the only place we have to talk, but it just kind of,
Well, related to that, Joe,
it raises an issue with me.
Mr. Ramsey, did your corporate attorney speak with Mr. Wilbur, our county attorney, at all regarding
No.
this? He didn't.
No, they did not.
So he made that, he sort of made that decision without having any conversations
Well,
with our attorney.
When the issue first arose, and there was a request from the county executive's office to consider compensation of some sort related to this mistake, obviously I needed to go talk to our corporate attorney. And their initial response, frankly, was that this is the kind of thing that happens from time to time in the normal course of engineering work, and the fact that the work was going to have to be done anyway, regardless of the big quantity that was out there, made it a pretty small liability. I'll just tell you, I put a tremendous amount of my personal integrity on the line with the company to get this through my company.
Well, I'll make a quick
to be
comment
frank
too.
on that.
I actually commend you for the 10% discount. I think that's very admirable considering the whole situation. So as a council person, actually, I want to thank you for that.
Josh?
Yeah, I just want to say, when I first saw the 10% discount piece, my spider sense is always tingling when I see something like that. And I think, there's something more, especially with any kind of release of liability. But that being said, we don't want to lose, $800,000 a month? Is that what you're saying, Weston?
If we have to transfer waste outside the county, that's our current estimate.
Well, that's why I want to be clear there. To the larger point, and this doesn't mean anything right here or now, but in the future, trash is expensive, and Dallas and his team, they do a fantastic job in diversion. I think we have one of the best rates in the state for, but ultimately, it'd be nice if we had more of a, right now we're looking at this cup right here. This, if you can tell, it has it says Sustainable Earth, and has little pretty little green leaves on there. It actually says on the bottom that this is compostable only in industrial facilities, not compostable in all areas. It'd be nice if we talked with the Maryland Environmental Service or somebody else to try to see if we could get a compost facility on the Eastern Shore or something like that. But it's neither here nor there. But in the future, we know trash is expensive, so as much as humanly possible. We need to start thinking long-term, so, thank you.
On the change order, it's noted here, and it's separated. I was a little confused here. Adel, there's a change order through Adel Construction for the 748-8. And then the rest of this change order is 153, 183, reference to Geosyntec. What does that mean?
So when we first signed the contract with Geosyntec to do the construction quality assurance, which is the inspections out there on site to make sure that we're getting the compaction we need, and following the contractor around in their day-to-day operations, it was assuming that the project would be completed at the end of August. And then with the time extensions that they've encountered through the weather delays, and the additional time needed to put in the fill, we have to extend the contract for the contractor to actually do the work, but in giving them additional time, Geosyntec, we need them on site for additional time as well to do the inspections and do the due diligence on the county's part to making sure we're getting the product.
Well, with the delays that are now being predicted due to the additional fill that's needed, when I read this, it says to me that because of the extension of time that's been, that now has to be considered due to the error in the calculation, that we now have to pay Adel an additional $748,800, and we will now have to pay Geosyntec an additional $153,183. Am I reading that correct?
It's not, the delay isn't specifically to the bid tabulation error. A larger part of that time delay is inclement weather, as I mentioned earlier, trying to compact.
Well, there was inclement weather mentioned. I wasn't sure if that was part of a different change order, because if you go further down in the document, when it reviews total background, it states very clearly that this additional change order is specifically for the time delays due to the additional fill that's needed and the amount of time it's going to take to address that. Because I was trying to distinguish that as well.
Sure.
And granted, in a lot of this document, it talks about weather issues. I wasn't so sure that wasn't addressed in a prior change order, but when you do come down to the actual Geosyntec after scope of services, when it comes down to specifically talking about the background, that's where it states it. So
in the second paragraph of the memo, it talks about the 90, it's 129 days total. 90 days of that is related to inclement weather, and the 39 days are related to the time needed to place the additional fill.
So where it says under Geosyntec's letter, it says background based on field review, it appears the total quantity of structural fill required to complete cell 9 will be approximately 39,000 cubic yards, more than the bid of 112. The additional work will also require a time extension to the overall construction project to account for the time it will take to haul the additional soil to the site. So again, it doesn't talk about weather here. It just specifically
No,
talks
it
about
talks
time.
about the weather in my cover memo.
I understand. So if you were to break down the 153, you're saying how much, what did you say was the amount of days in reference to weather and the amount of days in reference to time extension?
90 days is associated with weather, 39 days is associated with the time needed for the additional fill.
Yeah, Mr. Cannon, I can give you some
So
numbers.
I was wondering if the 39 days in itself, the county should be responsible to Geosyntec for the 39 days, whatever those totals might be, in reference to the fact that the only reason that's being extended is simply because of the miscalculation.
We would have needed those days anyway. That fill would have been needed. And the reparations for that additional time is realized in that 10% discount.
Okay,
I can give you a breakdown on the days if you'd like me to, how that works out.
But,
If you divide 129 days into the 153,183, it comes out to about $1,187 per day on average. And if you multiply that by the 39 days, it's $46,311. So that's, the 39 days would equate to about $46,000.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Taylor. Joe?
Sir, I wasn't questioning your integrity about this. I didn't realize you were in a bargaining position about the $80,000. I thought that was just offered up, the percentage, so I didn't realize that, the county executive's office was asking for discounts. It might have been in here somewhere, but I didn't realize that. But I still have a problem with us releasing liability for that. That seems like a small amount of difference for what could happen. This is a perfect example when there was a mistake made here with the amount of fill, so.
I guess, Mr. Wilbur, do you think that is in the best interest of the county?
I think the county has a decision to make about the risk of that remaining 1/3 of quantities. That's why I posed the question to Dallas earlier this week. Have you checked and double-checked the quantities that are still to be put in? Because I think that's a valid factor in determining should we release liability on quantity estimates.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think what we're hearing though from the people here before us is that risk is very minimal. Dallas, you said you've looked at this, and Weston's looked at this, Mr. Ramsey has looked at this, and you've all communicated, you're 2/3 through the project at this juncture of the game, so it appears that risk is very, very minimal.
That and the fact that if it's a quantity issue and that's all the liability release is specific about is bid quantities, if we need $1,000 more silt fence, we were going to need $1,000 more silt fence anyway. So
We're not talking about a $1,000 mistake. We're talking about something that could run into hundreds of thousands, like this mistake made.
yeah,
Like this mistake.
I guess this was presented to us, I don't know how far into the project. Things got moving pretty fast when Adel brought it to our attention that there wasn't enough soil to do the site. We're pretty confident with Public Works staff, Geosyntec double checking their numbers, and Adel coming to the table, that from a quantity standpoint, we don't have anything like this again.
And just to be clear too, the two are not married together. The change order for the
Right,
additional
we
work
understand that.
is not married to the discount. I mean, if we're like,
Right,
hey,
we
we don't
understand.
like the conditions, okay, we don't do the discount, but we move forward with the change order for the work that's necessary for the county to continue functioning.
Mr. Ramsey, if you hadn't been asked for a discount, you probably wouldn't have brought this to the table of a blanket release.
No, I would not have.
All right,
And
thank you.
I will say, though, what we would have done, which is what we have, is that we would have spent the time and effort made to correct the issue, to address the deal with the contractor and others, and I'd be happy to provide documentation if folks are interested, but I did a check through our accounting. We've spent more than $14,000 in labor and expenses over this issue that has not been billed to the county.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I just want to bring to your attention that this bill will die on February the 15th, which is before our next council meeting. So we can extend this date by resolution to February the 19th if council wishes to do that.
Thank you,
I
Ms.
just
Early.
want to bring that to your attention.
Thank you.
I think there's an urgent need to probably to vote on the transfer of funds.
Right.
Yes.
But the other that we can, how do we handle that? How do we handle not just voting on part of it?
Well, what we're voting on is just the transfer of funds.
Yes,
The
Right.
the signing is up to the executive, is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
So part of what the council would agree on would not include the release.
That's
Is that
right.
what you're saying?
Correct.
In the final analysis, that's for the executive to say yay or nay to and sign off on.
So why did we go through this?
So, well, no, we brought it up because we needed to explain why, yeah, understood.
Even I'm assuming even the 10% has nothing to do with the decision that's made here today.
That's right. What's before you
We
is,
We're just voting
do we
to
move
transfer.
the money?
We needed to explain why the transfer was needed, and this was part of that conversation.
Well, I'm glad you educated us.
Feels so much better.
I think it would be good to get a consensus from the council of how we feel about that.
I
the
agree.
other part of it.
I think that would be helpful.
Well, again, I would defer to Mr. Wilbur, because when everybody says you want to release them from liability, I don't answer that question. I ask an attorney, what's the best interest in the county,
Right,
right?
right.
I think he already made a statement indirectly.
And we need to approve or reject if we approve this to
Yes.
get the work getting
Right.
moving.
Correct.
Okay.
So
Can-
again,
can-
we are
can-
seeking a positive vote
Right.
on
Can-
this legislative bill.
Can we call the question
Yes, we can certainly call a question.
on the transfer?
Have we finished with all the questions from the council members? Any other further discussion? It requires a roll call vote. All those in favor of legislative bill 2018-05, amendment number 2, say aye. We'll start with Councilman Hastings.
Aye.
Councilman Kilmer.
Aye.
Vice President Dodd.
Aye.
Councilman Holloway.
Aye.
Councilman Davis.
Aye.
Councilman McCain.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Legislative bill 2018-05, amendment number 2, passes unanimously.
Thank you all.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan.
At this time, we open the floor for public comments. If you have any comments that you would like to make, please come to the podium, state your name, your county of residence, and your concerns. Seeing none, that concludes, oh, there we go.
Sorry.
Dr. Jerry Mason, Wicomico County. As you know, my concern is about Wicomico Nursing Home, and I've been doing some research and getting some questions answered, but I still need more. I'm not going to give this up until the battle's won. First of all, when I was talking about the nursing home to some of the people within the nursing home, as well as community leaders, we're concerned about the staff morale within the facilities because of all these, some says rumors, and some say that it was a mistaken quotation or whatever by Mr. Strasburg about the nursing home possibly being sold or closed. But regardless of what happened, it's out there, and we have to clarify that. I'm getting a sense, and my sister's in the nursing home, so I'm gonna let you know. She's there, she's been there 3.5 years. And when I go there, I'm getting the feeling that there is a lot going on where the staff is feeling like if they say anything, there will be retaliation. And I'm here to say that the council should protect those staff members because there's a liability there where it could be a lawsuit against the council if there's such a thing going on as retaliation for making comments about what's going on, where they are told that they may lose their job or they have to leave their job because of things being said about the operations, the day-to-day operations of the nursing home. So that's one of my concerns. And Mr. Strasburg did share with me, I'm sorry. Mr. Strasburg did send me a draft of the budget, and then today I received the full audit, which I didn't get a chance to read. But in the audit that he did send me of the draft, it showed that some decrease in services for 2018 and 2019. And as I go through the nursing home, and I met with Mr. Culver and Mr. Strasburg on yesterday in the hallway, not officially, but I was there and they were there. Opportunity knocks. And I did ask them about what was going to happen and what was the fiscal year. Were they using the fiscal year or the calendar year when they were talking about the possibility of bringing in a management company or closing, not closing, but selling the nursing home. And of course, they let me know this fiscal year, so that means June 30th. It's coming quickly. So that's my concern there. That if we're going to make a decision by June 30th, then we need to look at possibly inviting the public, putting out public notices and saying we're going to have a hearing and we want to have your input. I've already started a petition, which I have quite a few signatures on people who say they don't want that to happen. They would really like to see it as a community nursing home. And most of you have been there now. I've heard, you know. In fact, I missed you because I had other things on that day. But I'm glad that you had an opportunity to visit the facility and see how nice it is kept. And of course, as I said, staff morale is not where it was when my sister first entered there. And in looking at that budget in 2013, there was a drastic, I mean, it went from, it just flipped. And I understand that there was a $735,000 difference in that year, that there was non-bonded money that was used and had to be repaid. So I could understand that. But the oversight is that now that we have somebody who is looking at the budget, what can we do to make sure this never happened? Because all along, Wicomico Nursing Home was running, meeting its predicted income and doing everything it could to stay afloat without causing the county any funds, except for 2018, there was a deficit, $400-some thousand. And of course, now that is carried over because we have maintenance problems, and which I don't understand completely about, and I got to look at the new audit report to see where those funds were going, and it was over $8 million that was coming in or accounted for in the budget every year. And of course, my other concern is that everything that I have looked online and discovered, Wicomico Nursing Home has got great ratings, and they think it's one of the best facilities in Wicomico County. And I would love for my sister to stay there in that comfortable position. So what I am asking you is, if you decide to sell that place, what kind of notice would or she's not able to because she has dementia, but what notification will I have? Will it be 60-day notice, 30-day notice, that you're gonna let me know that, well, we're gonna sell, you know, it might be on a new management or whatever. And I think the community and the relatives that are in there, their families should know about the same thing. So what kind of one-on-one or public hearing are you gonna have to let us know if the nursing home is gonna be sold? And I do have some other questions, but it's about budget, and Mr. Strasburg told me to give him those questions because he couldn't answer them because someone else handles the budget in Baltimore, and he's asking some questions as well. So I'm gonna share that. I told him I would give him my written copy so he could share it, and then we would come back and discuss those things. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Mason. Thank you. Mrs. Hurley, as a clarification, if the sale were to take place, would it have to be surplused and then sold?
That's a very good question. I believe so. The county code does require that we actually have a public hearing on surplus.
Okay.
But I believe he's looking to have a management company come in.
No,
That was
no, I wasn't asking about a management company managing I was talking about, you know, her question was really about an outright sale that might occur.
Yes.
Any sale, anytime we're selling county property, it does have to go through the formal process, and the public has to be involved.
That is correct.
Yeah, okay. Does that help? Okay.
I think it would be 3 times, wouldn't it, Laura? Would have to be advertised 3 times, I think, at least.
Well, the surplus of
sell it.
property requires
Yeah.
2 times.
The
State law does require 3.
So,
Any other public comments? Seeing none, that concludes public comments. Council comments. Joe?
I have some sad news. Our latest addition to the Wicomico County Board of Education passed away yesterday, Mr. Dave Gosley. Mr. Dave was very dedicated to Wicomico County. He'd been active in a lot of different organizations over the years, and he'll be missed on the east side of the county. On a lighter note, I did visit the nursing home, and I've unfortunately had the opportunity to be at the nursing home quite a few times over the past few years, and as usual, it was in great shape. Everybody was out there working hard and keeping it clean, and people were being taken care of, and for where they had to be, they seemed very happy. So I hope things can work out to where there's not to be any changes made out there. So, and I think some of the other council members got there. One more thing, we got it's Girl Scout cookie time, if any of the Girl Scouts come around. And
You gonna pass those
and
around, Joe?
Ernie has just about bought Mark Kilmer's daughter out of Girl Scout cookies. I think he's got a whole stack back there. So anyway, support your local Girl Scouts if you have a chance.
Any other council comments?
Yeah, I think several of us went to the nursing home. We want to thank the director and the staff there for the tour, and they were very accommodating, and I think it was very productive for all of us.
Josh?
Yeah, I want to echo that. I know we have people from the nursing home visiting us at our meetings regularly, so it was nice for us to get out there and visit them and see the great job that they do. So thank you for your hospitality and helping educate us about it. And it was the facility was, it was a very good, well-kept up facility, so it was very impressive. Hopefully we can come to a conclusion that keeps the quality intact while also dealing with the money issues that are very real in terms of what the county does. It's a tough issue because none of us really have any expertise in nursing home management or anything like that, so we're all learning on this. So hopefully this process continues to go and go well. And I want to echo what Joe Holloway said about Mr. Gosley about. He was I've known him for over a decade now, and he was definitely dedicated to public service, and he will be missed. And it's unfortunate that he didn't get to serve longer on the school board. He had a real passion for that, for that position, and it's definitely a loss for our community. So,
Larry?
Yes, Ms. Hurley and I stopped by last Wednesday after we came back from Annapolis to the nursing home. And I want to thank you all for the hospitality. And it's amazing how many people I saw there that I knew visiting loved ones. And it's obvious that they do care about their loved ones and they care about that facility and they express their concern. And I'm not sure if the employees knew we were there or not, but they were really working hard. So the place isn't brand new, but it's not that bad a shape. I think it's in good shape, and I think the quality of care is there, and I have seen the ratings that are very high as well. So, and on behalf of Mr. Gosley, yes, he was a good friend of mine, and we kind of tag teamed on the District 3 election together. He asked me to help him, and I did, and he fought hard to win that election, and he's a prime example. If you hear anybody say your vote doesn't count, you're wrong, because he won that election by 1 vote after the recount. So I'm thinking about his family.
Under presidential comments. Larry, I'm sorry, Ernie?
Me too. I was also one of the ones that went to the nursing home, and after looking at it, it needs a lot of work done to it because it hasn't been done in the past. And I think if work is done to upgrade it and modernize it and get the good leadership in position with a vision, as if like we did to the airport, brought someone in with a vision, I don't see why that nursing home can't go back and to be self-sufficient on its own.
Thank you, Ernie. Under presidential comments, Mr. Gosley was in District 3, is that not correct?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Which is, can you give us the sort of the boundaries of where District 3 is, Larry?
I always say it's the Route 13 or Route 50. It would be the southeast quadrant of the county, basically, without overlapping a whole lot on 50 or 13. So,
Okay.
And I think Councilman Holloway's on the other side, the northeast quadrant.
So it's, yeah, okay.
So it'd
The
be
reason
Powellville, Fruitland, part of Parsonsburg, and all that area.
The reason I ask that is because, for clarification, because if there's anyone in the public that would be interested in serving on the school board, and how the process will work from here, we've already notified the education committee, who will then reach out to try to find anyone in the community who's interested in this position. They will do interviews, and then they will send recommendations as far as who they would like to see filling this position. That's how it's going to work. So it is open to the public. It won't be brought back up for another election at this time. We need to fill this position immediately. So if you are interested, make sure you pay attention. You can contact the council office. We'll be glad to steer you in the right direction. Eventually, you will come to the Education Committee, though, and they will make that decision as far as their recommendations, so that it eventually comes to the council for our final decision. So, but we do need people who are interested. And if you're in District 3, if you voted for Larry Dodd, then you know where your district is.
Right. And if you have any questions, I served 5 years on the board, and I'd be glad to answer any questions for you.
So that being said, we'd love to see people come on board and look for that role. It's a very rewarding responsibility for the county and for the Board of Education. That being said, I'd like to entertain a motion, if I could, to adjourn from the legislative session to go into open work sessions, followed by a closed work session pursuant to the general provisions, Article Section 3-305B7, to consult with legal counsel to preserve the attorney-client privilege, followed by an administrative closed session to discuss internal auditor projects pursuant to Section 3-104 of the general provisions article. I still don't know why we can't put that on the screen as a disclaimer, then I'll have to read it.
Well,
Legally, I have to read the whole thing.
At least you got a cheat sheet.
That's my motion.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Meeting's adjourned. First item on the agenda is an open work session in reference to stormwater management update.
Excuse me? Take a 5-minute break.
We can, if you'd like to take a 5-minute recess?
We take a 5-minute
All right, we're going
recess.
to take a 5-minute recess. Let you need to hook up to Alice?
Yeah.
County Council, an open work session for February 5th. The first item on the open work session is the stormwater management update. Mr. Dallas Baker, thank you for being here tonight. And from what we've seen in the brief book, it's a pretty detailed update. Be anxious to see what you have to add.
Okay. What's that? I don't know. Ernie was asking for 2 hours, so I don't know.
You know, it's not legislative, so keep it short.
Yes. Okay, so real quickly, as you know, we've been working on a couple engineering studies. Pratt Road, we had applied for a grant through MEMA to begin the first phase of the construction to begin improvements out there. This just as a refresher. Phase 1 is downstream improvements, which is actually behind Nisdale, where Pratt Road eventually makes its way to. The water going down through West Nisdale is eroding a channel behind the homes. So we need to stabilize that before we start sending more water through Pratt Road. We just received an update yesterday, and I've updated the slide here, which isn't in the briefing books, because the MEMA did approve the grant, and the next step is now it is being forwarded to FEMA for consideration. So it's the first time we've run through this grant process, and there's 4 phases. We get the initial approval, which we've gotten, and there's a secondary approval, which we've now gotten. It's under review now by FEMA, and what they say is, if they're going to tell us no, they'll tell us no by May, but if they're going to tell us yes, they'll tell us yes by December. So.
It's going to be drug out.
Yeah, and that does not.
Does that mean if they don't say no by May, it automatically it's going to be yes in December?
I had the same question. And we were
It's
all,
yes or no,
we
so
were all
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
yeah. If you've not been told no, then
Right.
so.
Makes you scratch your head.
Yeah, and but it may be affected by any future government shutdowns. And as far as the switching to Cody Cox, we've awarded a contract to GMB to begin working on the permits required to go in there and clean out that branch. This would be between Morris and Rose Streets. Again, we're dealing with wetland impacts. We have to set up erosion control permits and various other agencies before we're allowed to go in there and start getting the debris out of that flow
But it
path.
won't be GMB doing the cleaning though, will it?
No.
Okay.
We'll be doing it with in-house forces.
We will be doing it.
Yeah, but it's just the type of information that's required is beyond.
They'll be handling it for us.
Yeah,
I got you.
exactly.
Will we be doing that in concert with the city?
I say, because some of that goes through the city, right?
Yeah, the area between Morris and Rose is ours. South of Rose is the city's. I've made the city aware that we're going to be doing the work. Whether or not they are going to be doing anything in their section, I don't know. We've alerted them to some of the pipe invert elevation discrepancies downstream, but I've not heard anything if they're going to have any mitigation plan to address those issues. But our house will get in shape.
They have done some cleanup efforts there in the past.
Correct.
Oh, yeah, Sheree did a lot of cleanup efforts there. I think she did 2 years, didn't she?
Yeah, but we went down on the creek. We was up on the dry land. This is going down in the creek.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tires and stuff are in there.
Backing up just 1 second, because you got ahead of me. At Pratt Road, the grant, how much is the grant for?
So the grants are capped at $100,000. We are asking for the full amount for design and for construction, which is, as you can see, it's a little under $60,000.
Okay.
That'll fall under our labor as well, labor costs.
No, that's having somebody else go in there and haul in the material and the riprap needed to stabilize behind
to do
Weston
it.
Hill. Okay.
Yep.
Do you think that will help with the flooding in that area?
That will, the entire plan, yes, will help with the flooding in that area. This step in particular, no, you're not gonna see a difference in Pratt Road because again, we can't send the additional water that we wanna send until we know we're not gonna damage anything downstream. So this is shoring that area up. And again, with those $100,000 limits to these FEMA grants, the way we've structured the work is such that we'll keep applying for each phase. We'll have this application. And FEMA is favoring the communal approaches as opposed to where they used to just provide funds for single-family homes to be raised up because of a floodplain issue or something. They're looking for these community-type projects. So we've got some favorable things working for us.
Like we saw after hurricanes.
On that Pratt Road, is the stormwater pond sufficient? The design of that stormwater pond right on Pratt Road, is that sufficient? What is the neighborhood there again?
Hunter's Mill.
Hunter's Mill, yeah.
Yes.
Is that sufficient, or there's some serious corrections that need to be made to that?
So it was sufficient for when the design standards for when it was built. It can be increased to hold additional water, to hold more volume back. But we also have the opportunity to provide additional water quality improvements that we can then use to claim credit through the WIP program and through the MS4. So we're actually going to get, with the improvements that we plan to do for that pond in particular, we're going to get a nice trifecta of addressing flooding, getting MS4 credits, and getting WIP credits all out of the same project.
So in trying to improve the quality, you may be making it larger, or?
Yeah, I would suspect what we're gonna do is just go deeper with it.
Deeper, yeah.
We'll look where the groundwater table is, you know, 'cause we can't dig below the groundwater table. It's not gonna do anything in terms of quantity management. But yes, we'll look at making it bigger. And again, this is through their HOA. They have control over it. So we do have to approach Hunter's Mill HOA about this. We've talked briefly with them about the general concepts. We don't have anything in writing. We will have to take that step of getting permissions from folks before these projects move forward. And the same is true with West Nistdale.
And the only other thing I'll ask you about, because it's that same area, and we're in that particular quadrant, is the work they're doing right now, the state's doing on Nanticoke Road. I'm assuming they're going to be allowing more water to pass through under the road, maybe? Do you know?
That's what I've been told. I've not seen the plans yet, but their ultimate plans are to allow more water to go through. They have to do a series of hydraulic modeling because that pond, Rehoboken Pond, discharges to Anderson Mill Pond, which then goes to the river. You know, we had the washout of Anderson Mill Pond or Pemberton Drive when that boat got stuck in our outfall. That does not affect Pratt Road. Pratt Road drains to the river through the same path, but does not drain directly into Anderson Mill or Riverwalk.
Right, yeah, and I understand that, but I was, like I said, it's in the same area. But I want to make sure we don't leave too much out there.
Yes.
Because the last storm that we had, and I don't believe it was when we had the trouble with the boat. I just believe it was when we just had a lot of rain. And through both of those culverts, it was just pouring out of there incredibly fast. And I was just concerned that if the state allows more to go south, are we protecting, or is the state going to help us to protect Pemberton Drive at that location? Because it's twice it's happened.
The state has to prove to the Maryland Department of Dam Safety that they are not having an adverse impact downstream.
Okay.
So, and they have to model what we have in Anderson Mill.
Perfect.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Great. The latest drainage study we're working on is Kaywood Drive. That study is complete. Just to give you some background on it, the area of South Kaywood Drive, which is just off of Mount Herman Road behind where the old Kmart used to be, it drains to Parker Pond. It is almost a 26-acre drainage shed. A lot of the pipes in that storm drain system are very flat at a 0.06%. Typically, we'll see a 2%, maybe a 1.5, so 0.06 is very flat. The system has several bottlenecks in it. It starts at a 15-inch upstream, then increases to a 24, then decreases back down to a 15, then in turn increase back to a 24. The outfall that it discharges to in Parker Pond is subject to surcharging, and in heavy rains, what that means is the water level in the pond rises up and covers the outfall from the storm drain. And it is not sized to handle more, or I'll say it's not capable of handling more than about the 1-year storm right now. Just to give you an idea, our normal current systems are designed to handle the 10-year storms. So there's also several areas within the Kaywood Drive community that have localized flooding in their backyards due to depressions. They're just at lower elevations, which is a challenge to help address the flooding damage that the residents out there are experiencing. So there were several alternatives. One alternative we looked at is replacing those smaller 15-inch pipes downstream with a 36-inch pipe and taking that to the pond. But what we found is that there wasn't any appreciable difference in addressing the flooding. We still weren't able to get much above the 1-year storm simply because of how flat those pipes are. They're just not laid at significant slope enough to get that volume of water off of Kaywood and down into the pond. So we looked at two other alternatives, variations on a theme. A lot of the drainage that is coming onto Kaywood is coming from the farm field to the east of it. We looked at building a swale to intercept that water and sending that directly to Parker Pond, or building a pipe system and intercepting it and again sending it to Parker Pond. Both of these scenarios are able to adequately address the 10-year storm and reduce flooding on Kaywood Drive. There are also alternatives in the study for extending that system into Kaywood and then providing outreached pipes to pick up the flooding in folks' backyard. Now, whether or not that's something we want to do is another story, but there are engineering options available to help address flooding in folks' backyard.
When they have flooding in the backyard, it also crosses the road in front of their house.
The water in the backyard, so what'll happen is when you get flooding in the road, these are because of the large storms. What you don't see is water building up in the backyard and then coming into the road. It's these large storm events where we're getting 8 inches of rain in 6 hours and everything floods, that you'll see water built up in the road. They will experience some localized flooding in the smaller storms where it starts creeping in from their backyard, but it doesn't touch our road until you get to the very large storms.
Yeah, I've been out there and saw it during one of the storms.
So we have a couple alternatives. The piping option is cheaper. The hiccup to this is we've had discussions, Public Works has had discussions with the farmer, and he had some bad experiences with State Highway when they were building the bypass. And right now, he is not willing to give us an easement or sell us the property that we need to put in this pipe or swale system. The pipe's obviously gonna be a lesser impact to any type of farming operation. So it's, you know, we're gonna have to have some further discussions with him to see if there's, you know, any wiggle room or any type of assurances that we can give him.
Since that's for the public good, eminent domain's an option?
It
I know
is,
you probably- I know
it is.
I'm sure you don't want to go that route, but
Yes.
that's what it's for.
Yes. Yes, and that is an option, or again, trying to, you know, if he knows we're truly serious about building this up, maybe, you know, trying to find out what his concerns are. But I do know that he, whatever the state promised him, apparently they didn't deliver when they built the bypass, and that's unfortunately bleeding over onto our efforts. But we'll continue to have talks with him, and if anyone in the council knows him and.
You want us to make promises to him?
No, but.
I don't think so.
That we can't keep. In that area, you and I talked about, that day that the State Highway folks were out there, about that ditch that went alongside the woods, and that field that was across the street. It was down near the Atkins. Was there any further discussion about that, and would that help relieve any of the flooding?
Not for Kaywood, no, it's two separate drainage
Yeah,
sheds.
it is down a couple blocks.
Yeah. So, moving on, as far as drainage construction goes, we've been still out cleaning out ditches, constructing new ditches. Out here on Fawn, a couple pictures of Fawn Drive, which is off of Old Ocean City Road. There was an actual ditch there at one point. Again, we just went in and reestablished it. Same thing for Dagsboro Road. That ditch was there. It was just in very poor shape. We had to dig down, you know, several feet to get that cleaned out and open and running again. We actually got an email from a citizen out there thanking us, saying that whatever work we did is working because Dagsboro is not flooding the way it used to.
Good.
Up in the Sharptown area, we were having some drainage issues. We found a beaver dam, so we're still running into our good little friends, our happy little beavers out there.
They'll be back.
Yes, they will, and busting those open to get water moving. It has been since September, since we actually last talked specifically about drainage, so I just wanted to list everything that we have accomplished since September. More work here than I can put into pictures. Right now, we're doing work down on Collins Wharf Road, working with the Moore family. You can see the picture here. There are a lot of the grass clippings from the sod farms make their way into the ditches, and you can see where, at the end of the day, where we had stopped at, and we obviously came back and kept on working on those ditches. Out on Baker Road, we've cleaned out the ditch alongside of the road. And what I want to point out is the picture on the right. This ditch drains our road and then takes a 90-degree turn and heads out through a farm field. And this is a typical drainage pattern of what we see in the county, where our public roads eventually take an angle outside of our right-of-way, head through a field into the woods, and kind of disappear. We've reached out as far as we can with the grade-all in this picture, but again, this is one of the challenges of, okay, how do we address getting these farm fields cleaned out to open up the drainage to keep things moving? I don't have an answer yet. It's something we're working on, but it's just something that I want to make the council aware of.
What do you think you're going to be doing differently now than you were before? Because these are now going to have to be maintained on a regular basis.
Right. These areas, these aren't new. A lot of these aren't new. A lot of these are places that we've cleaned out existing, and we're still working off of a reactive system where we're going out when we get calls of, hey, I've got a flooding issue, can you come out and take a look? Hey, I've got a flooding issue, can you come out and take a look? I would certainly love to have a dedicated crew doing nothing but going through the county and cleaning out these ditches on a systemic basis, the same way we cut grass.
But to follow up on Mr. Cannon's comment, it's, by looking at the before and after, it looks like the ditch is filled in through erosion. So what are, I think he was asking, what are we gonna do to maintain those? So it doesn't happen again.
Again, you're talking about a proactive program, someplace where we're going in and actively cleaning these out, whether we're getting calls or not. And
So we have to do that.
That would be ideal. I don't have the resources to do that, though.
Well, you mentioned a dedicated crew to doing that. I mean, it's budget season's coming up. Are we gonna see that in the budget? A request for a dedicated crew?
I'll say right now, we have about 10 vacancies in the road department. So it's difficult to make requests for additional people when I'm not even fully staffed right now. And we're just not seeing people apply. We've got positions open from entry level up through experienced equipment operators to mechanics to masons, and people aren't applying.
So you have 10 allotted positions that nobody has applied for.
We get a lot of folks that will just throw in an application, hairdressers applying to operate a grade hall. It's like, okay, so, I appreciate the effort, but it doesn't help me. But,
Is it the pay?
good question. There was a recent study that was undertaken, but I mean, I have lost, give you an example, I've lost mechanics, to jobs. They come in, they work for a year, they get their experience, and then they're hired away from us at salaries that I can't match.
Stepping stone.
Yeah, so it's a challenge. So to answer your question, are there going to be more positions requested? I have a hard time justifying, hey, I need 7 more people to go out and put a crew together to clean ditches when I've got 10 vacancies sitting right here. If I can get my 10 filled and I'm maxed out, and I need more. Right now, I'd be happy with getting my 10 filled the vacancies I've got. So, no, I'm not putting a request in for additional people when I can't fill what I've got.
Maybe you should.
Well, I think the whole idea was that these projects that you've spent a whole lot of time putting together, which is really great, they're not long-term. Sounds to me like you've dug a ditch on Dagsboro Road, you dug a ditch on Fallen Drive, but 2 months from now, 3 months from now, those ditches are going to disappear. It seemed like we have a process, a program in place. That's what I was trying to get at.
Okay, yeah, and again, we're actively looking at doing more ditching. That message is clear. We need to. Where ditching used to be at the bottom of the list. It's like, okay, what more ditching can we do? Where else are places that we can go to? I mean, when we clean these things out, we typically were, even when we were fully staffed under the HUR money and we were enterprise fund, is my understanding, we were cleaning out ditches maybe once every 5 years. If we have to come back in 6 months and find this ditch silted in, there's something else is going on. These cleaned out ditches should last for years now. I mean, you'll see vegetation starting to grow in the bottom, which is actually a good thing. It helps stabilize the ditch. It helps remove nutrients. It's what, some folks will call us up saying, hey, I've got grass growing in the bottom of my ditch, come clean it out. Well, that grass is a good thing. And you can see some of the differences, especially like on the Collins Wharf example, of when the ditches truly need to be cleaned out.
The picture that you show in Baker Road, there's a couple years ago I did a lot of work with American Farmland Trust and a couple others, but working with our ag community, I work in conservation, but majority of the lands here we have here, the ag lands are all still leased land, and usually the landowners do a great job of taking care of the properties. The leased folks don't do as good of a job, and so we tried to work with the broader public. I don't know if there's a way that we can continue to do that, some sort of efforts to be able to help. The folks that are on the land they need to be doing a better job of continuing to take care of the lands. And I think the ag community has always been very, number one, the first to say that, having come from there.
You mentioned Levin to Shield Road. What's what's been happening there. I mean, it's, you know, it's a lot more heavily traveled than it used to be, and I'm not, you know, the part between the Collector Road and Anacostia Road, which is, you know, very heavily traveled, is, you know, again, a light rain, it's flooded, you know, so I haven't seen much drainage work done there, so.
Yeah, Levin in particular is a challenge because there's not a clear drainage path that we can get that all that water wants to go to Mitchell Pond. But we've got to cross private fields, private businesses, get it someplace, and there's not an easy fix there.
Well, but you mentioned you've been working on Levin to Shield, so what have you been?
So there are sections along Levin to Shield, further past the nursery, further past the where Naylor Mill intersects Levin, where more towards that end.
More going towards Hebron.
Yeah, exactly. There was a lady back there that was having some problems with her house flooding, and you know we looked at cleaning out some of the dishes and get some of that stuff moving off of her property.
I mean, if the Collector Road's not gonna be completed, and you're gonna be, you know, the traffic pattern is forced on 11 to Shield Road now to use the Naylor Mill Road, then it, you know, either we should complete the Collector Road to get the traffic off that portion of 11 to Shield Road, or we should get drainage, so we're, you know, people aren't hydroplaning on the, you know, regularly there. So I think there's two options there.
Yeah, I'm hoping there's an opportunity to partner with the state in addressing some of that area, because, you know, the state still is actively looking at Nanticoke Road 349 at the entrance to Willow Creek, where those fields flood over top of 349 and then head down Willow Creek into that community. Depending on what type of ditch swale system that I imagine they would build along 349, we might have the opportunity to tie into that to get the water to move to an outfall. But you know, I don't think that will address all of Levin. I think it'll address the portions closer to Nanticoke Road. But as far as, you know, that middle section, that's probably another section that needs a drainage study to try to come up with a solution of how are we going to get this water from this bowl to an outfall. So it's on the radar, and it will, you know, we're just trying to chip away. Any other questions on this section? Okay. Still working with drainage outreach. I've met with the managers of the Allen PDA and the Horsebridge PDA to discuss some of their drainage concerns. Coming up on the 13th, I'm meeting with the Soil Conservation Board of Supervisors to see if there's any type of coordination we can do between drainage projects they're working on and what we're working on. Again, looking for any overlap or ways to partner with other organizations. And while I was at the Horsebridge meeting, there was a representative from the Kilburny HOA. They asked me to attend their meeting coming up this spring. I told them, you know, no problem, I'll be there for that, and potentially be discussing possibly an urban service district to try to address some of the drainage problems in Kilburny. It was asked a while back how we determine how we prioritize projects within public works and drainage. What I wanted to start with on this slide is just to explain, you know, Roads Division does have other responsibilities besides drainage. And currently when we're assessing projects, our first one is still always emergency response, whether it's snow plows, hurricane responses. Our next priorities are pipe failures in roads. If something opens up that's going to cause a hole in the road, you know, beyond just a pothole, that's going to take priority. We still have to address our paving programs. We will actively go out before a road is paved and replace the crossroad pipes underneath it. Nobody wants to see a newly paved road then cut open to have a pipe replaced and see a joint and, oh, there's the bumps. And a good example of that is Anderson Mill Pond on Permanent Drive at Anderson Mill Pond. I'm sure you guys have experienced that bump several times. After the roads are paved, we have to go in and replace the shoulders. Typically, what'll happen is you'll have several inches of drop-off between the height of the new asphalt and where the shoulder's at, so we have to go in and put millings or stone back to make sure that it has that safe transition in case anybody's vehicle accidentally leaves the road. And then we get to our drainage issues, and we get to tree trimming and grass cutting. Typically, the crews that are cutting grass in the summer and spring are the same ones that are cutting the trees in the fall and the winter. So you'll see that one crew come off and that same crew go back to a different job. And then lastly, our dirt road maintenance, which I know you've been bringing up. We are still working on Bear Swamp, and that portion of Walnut Tree. They're still on our list. We're experiencing a lot of vandalism of the road, I'll say. Folks going out with their four-wheelers and just tearing it up. So we're finding sections that we have to go back in and regrade. But that's the first step of where we are as far as where drainage is looking within the picture of all the things that get accomplished in the roads division.
You know, with the Walnut Tree, I was really surprised. I mean, I happened to be headed in that direction in the middle of the day, but if you were going down that road at night at any great amount of speed, your car would probably not end up getting out of there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a liability on the part of the county, but I mean, I don't usually pay that much attention, but I was extremely shocked as to the condition. There's literally a pond about the length of this room in the middle of the road.
Mm-hmm.
And again, at night, someone's going to go right through it.
Yeah.
And there was a pothole that literally could have completely taken the wheel off my car. It was that deep.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, again, in the middle of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just worried about, what we might open ourselves up to as a county to keep that road open under the circumstances.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of those dirt roads are worse than that.
Yeah, I mean, we
Camel
literally,
Trail.
we got stuck on Bear Swamp today. One of our own public works trucks got stuck on Bear Swamp. I mean, especially with the high groundwater table, the way we're all seeing it right now, there are portions of these dirt roads that are underwater. That, in reality, we can't grade until that water level starts dropping because you can't grade mud. But we're taking out tandem loads of stone and dumping them into some of these holes to start building these roads back up to get them to where they're at. So, and just in those cases also, just as an FYI, when we are looking at dirt roads, we do try to prioritize the roads that people actually live on versus
Sure. Yeah.
As the top priority. But yes, we are hearing your concerns about Bear Swamp and Walnut Tree, and we are trying to address them. So back to drainage projects, there are two in my mind: what we can do in-house and the ones that we have to then program into the budget and into the CIP. When we're looking at a project, the first thing we do is, when we get a call about a drainage concern, the first thing we do is we go out and look at it, boots on the ground, see what the problem might be. And we start going through all these lists of questions to figure out, is it something that we can handle in-house? Is it a life safety issue? I mean, that's going to get that immediate response. How many people are being affected? Is the road being affected? How many people travel on the road? Do we have the equipment to address it? How long is it going to take? Do we need a permit? Are we in a wetland or a blue line stream? If it is something that we can handle in-house, is it something that, can it fit within our current operating budget? So all of these things go into whether or not we handle something at roads or whether or not something is developed into a CIP project or bigger. I can't cite one specific example because it's just a matrix of things. If something like Cody Cox is going to be, needs that permit level, so okay, that we're going to be able to do the work in-house, but we have to put it further down the schedule on the priority list simply because, well, we know it's going to take us a month or 2 months to get those permits. So, all right, while we're doing that, we can go out and do ditching on Collins Wharf because we don't need a permit to do that. So, and then the crew that's working on Collins Wharf will then go over to Cody Cox when we get those permits. So it's a very dynamic situation. If we determine that a project can't be handled in-house, we look at very similar items. You know, safety concerns. I mean, when we're prioritizing, is this something that's gonna, if it fails, it's gonna cause a loss of life? Are we experiencing property damage because of it, like out on Kaywood Drive? Or is it just nuisance flooding? Is somebody's front yard that's got 5 or 6 acres got a puddle in front? They don't like it, and it's not, you know, they like to see it addressed, but when you compare that to, say, the problems out on Pratt Road, it's gonna fall further back in the priority schedule. We look at how many people are affected, how many cars are traveling on the roadway, what the costs are, can we access it? You know, do we have access? In the example of Twin Tree, the road is right there next to the branch that needs to get cleaned out, and it's going on in conjunction with a downstream improvement where we're gonna replace the pipes under Riverside Drive that Twin Tree replaces into, so it ties in nicely with project overlap. Again, we also look at permitting, easement needs, and any other additional criteria, such as can the project be modified to get us some WIP credit or MS4 credits with those projects. So, and with that, I'm finished. We can answer any other questions.
Any questions from anyone? On the Kaywood, what do you see as the final solution there as far as, I say final solution, your initial
Yeah.
recommendations?
The next step is going to be how do we acquire the necessary right-of-way or easements to get that pipe in the ground on the larger side. We have to get that. Once we get that, then we can start programming in monies for the design of that storm drain pipe, and then construction.
So what is the biggest obstacle? Is that farmer's property, that easement really needed? Is that the most important aspect to this?
Right now, yes. That option is far cheaper than, say, the option of let's go tear up the center of Kaywood Drive and put a new storm drain pipe right down the middle of it. I mean, that is by far the cheaper option. If it's a no, but definitely no from the farmer, and eminent domain is not something the council wants to explore, then we may have to go in and look at, all right, we're gonna have to put in a pipe down the middle, and what's that cost going to be? But you're definitely talking significant surface restoration as opposed to covering a pipe up with some farm dirt versus repaving an entire road.
Yeah, and again, I think, as Councilman McCain has suggested, if you get into eminent domain as, last option, nobody likes that. Nobody ever wants to get into eminent domain.
No.
But I think if it's a case where where what the county does doesn't infringe too much, I think, on the value of the property, I don't think it would, do you? I mean, would it really create a...
Yeah, well, sometimes it's a special benefit, and we're actually doing this on the western shore for a lot of the counties for the state of Maryland, because they've had to take over a lot of the stream beds and so forth that have collapsed and things of that nature, and they're doing easements on these stream beds. And it's, they have to pay property owners, but it's a fairly small amount because they're doing they're actually improving them, and they're doing permanent easements on these, these waterways, and these, some of the ditches are actually blue water lines, and just to keep, to open them up and restore them. But, it might come to that, for us, but really the end result is, you're actually making an improvement. So, and you're only dealing with their existing ditches as they are now. So in a lot of the cases, but we might have to do easements, on these properties.
And it might be that if we approach them and say, look, we're putting a pipe in, so you're not losing, your ability to use your land.
Right,
And
it's going underground.
if we make the easement conditional on that, look, barring some type of catastrophic emergency, we're not gonna do any work other than when you're not harvesting. So if you've got, we'll come in and do our work during the fall and winter when you're not actively using your field. Maybe we can put that as a condition in the easement, and again, see what this gentleman's concerns are, and try to find a path forward.
Okay. Yeah, I think you've done a great job, Dallas. The second portion of what we were trying to maybe address, this is the physical aspect of it. The other part we were trying to address, which we're still a ways off, I guess, is the county's role as far as establishing guidelines, parameters, whether or not we need to have some compliance issues recommended. How do you see that developing next, or how far away might we be on that? Because that's a critical element too.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we're going to be working on next is talking with developers about what I'm going to say is just individual lot grading plans. A lot of the problems that we're seeing are when these lots are built lower than the road. The road is designed to pick up the water, drain it to a stormwater facility, and not have people's yards flood. But builders go in, like in Westonsdale, and build lower than the road, it doesn't help. But before we drop any type of regulatory hammer, we want to have a discussion with the developers and say, look, here's the problems that we're experiencing. Is this something that you guys can self-regulate? Can you start, what do you need from us? Is there something that we can help you with to get this stuff up, instead of just coming in and saying, here's a bunch of new regulations you got to follow, and sorry for your luck for the cost. So we're trying to take a more grassroots approach with some of these developers and say, hey, look, so we've got a list together. We're going to be reaching out to them to have a kind of forum meeting of, here's the challenges that we're facing on the drainage side that the county's facing. Is there some way we can work together without having to go we got to write laws and regulations for it? So that's the next approach.
Yeah, and I can understand that. The reason I asked is because, with what you displayed on Fulham Drive and Dagsburg Road, which is excellent work.
Thank you.
The first thing I thought was, okay, well, what about a quarter mile down the road? And what about a half mile down the road? If you've established this small network of ditches, but if a quarter mile down the road, whoever's living there or whoever owns that property isn't maintaining that ditch, then this is not going to be, as successful a project for the entire region.
Yeah, and that follows very true with the example on Baker Road, where we're going in and what's in our right of way is very easy to address.
Right.
But when it drains outside of our right of way, how do we go about trying to encourage someone to go out and clean it? Maybe they don't have the money. Maybe they don't have the resources.
Yeah.
Maybe they're just.
So with situations like that, we don't have legislation on the books to make these property owners comply with the ditches and the drain?
Not that I'm aware of, not that, it's, no. And it's a tough question. How do you say, okay, the government's gonna come in and tell you what you gotta do on your property, but what you're doing on your property is also affecting everybody else's.
Right.
So, and.
It's a quality of life issue.
Yeah.
It's no different than the government making a decision to put a stop sign up, because if you don't, you're gonna run the stop sign, you might kill somebody. They're necessary evil sometime, but I completely understand, we don't wanna overextend, our hand, but, some measures I think may need to be taken for the good of everybody, without being too punitive on any of it. So.
Yeah, and it might be that we have to come in and do the work and then bill them afterwards. And maybe that's spread out over some type of reasonable time frame so that it's not, a burden.
Stick with it. All right, Dallas.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dallas.
Thanks.
Good work.
The next item we have on the agenda is the capital improvement program and budget. Thank you. Is Weston still in the building, do you know? Weston, yeah?
to see if he's in the building.
So I was under the impression, I don't know how the council's gonna really, how successful it's gonna be to discuss a capital improvement program when nobody from the executive branch is here to discuss it.
I was informed by the Director of Administration that if council had any questions, I could send him an email tomorrow or let him know, and they would follow up.
They're not, they weren't aware of the fact that we were having a public work session on the capital improvement program?
Yes, they were aware of work session.
The email they sent said they're not coming.
That is correct.
I read the email.
Wow. It wasn't so much whether they were or they weren't, it was more so what was the reason that they felt that they, it wasn't necessary to attend a public session.
And we're supposed to approve a capital improvement program, but nobody's here to discuss it.
Well, regardless of their email, we have on the agenda Mr. Weston Young and Mr. Wayne Strasburg as the two people that we would like to have here in order for us to effectively review this multi-million-dollar program and budget. Council have any questions they want to review, anything in particular amongst ourselves? I have several questions that I don't really want to put in emails. I have quite a few questions in reference to a lot of portions of this. You know, projects in general services, several things that,
I mean, it would have been good for the public to hear the answers to the questions and not get them over email, but,
yeah.
oh well, I guess. That's so much for transparency.
Right. Well, it will be on the agenda next, in what's our time frame?
The capital improvement program has to be adopted by the third Tuesday in February, so it would need to be adopted at the next council meeting.
I think it was planned.
Well, maybe we won't be here on the third Tuesday in February. Can we do that?
Doesn't affect him.
Yeah, right, I know. I just, you know that would. Next item we have on the agenda is the Poplar Hill Substance Use Treatment Program. All right, I think the public needs to know we have a serious problem here with a dysfunctional set of circumstances whereby we have quite a few, I think, very significant issues that we have invited the executive branch to discuss with us tonight with, as has been noticed, some serious deadlines. You know, the capital improvement program and budget is one of the largest bills that we're involved with as far as citizens funding, and it's very important that it be vetted properly with the legislative branch and with the executive branch. We're now looking at the Poplar Hill Substance Use Treatment Program, and you know, the executive branch is choosing to stonewall the county council on this matter as well, which again, I think is extremely serious to the public to see an open discussion, especially on this project, because everyone's concerned about substance abuse and everyone's concerned about seeing resolutions to it, but in the same sense, they're very concerned about the location of this treatment facility, what exactly it involves. We're reading in the paper that it's $1 million commitment from the state.
Funding.
But there is no one in Wicomico County outside of maybe the executive branch that truly understands what's happening at Poplar Hill. And I think it's a travesty for the executive branch not to show up in some type of, I would say, to sort of, to me, it's just as if they're stamping their feet and thumping their chest that we're not going to show up for your capital improvement program. We're not going to show up for the Poplar Hill Substance Use Treatment Program or any other event that you want to do today. And all of this simply because of the fact that there was a request to put an item on the agenda for tonight, which we did not have time to add to the agenda, which is our prerogative, and which we politely relayed that information to the executive branch.
And the requests come in quite a bit late, too.
And the request came in pretty much the one business day before we were going to have our meeting.
That's correct.
The,
Mr. President, I concur with your sentiments.
I just think it's a travesty for the citizens of Wicomico County to be subjected to this dysfunctional relationship that currently exists with the county executive. I don't find this the fault of the county council whatsoever, but I do think it reflects badly on Wicomico County as a whole when we have to have these discussions due to these type of circumstances. The next item on the agenda are, yes,
Can we
Joe.
talk about the Poplar Hill?
Yes, certainly.
Amongst the council? I mean, if they want to. Does
Go ahead.
Anybody
Yeah.
want to?
Sure.
Sure. Yeah. I guess I'll start. You know, we requested the county executive's office to be here, was it last month, 2 meetings ago, Laura? And fill us in on this? And they said there
It's
was
been a
no
few
information
weeks.
to give us, but then we read about it in the newspaper.
That's
So
right.
there was information, I guess, to be passed out at some point in time. But it wasn't passed out to us. And I've started getting questions from constituents about what's going there and how it's going to be handled. And I've got quite a few questions. John, I do want to correct you. You said $1 million. It was stated back in June or July that it's going to be almost $10 million.
How much
for this
was the
project.
renovation? That was like about 10 million also, wasn't it?
8 to 10, it was different numbers thrown around.
Right.
You know, one of the questions I have is, the state wants us to sign a lease. Will we be signing it, if you want to take some of these questions down, will the county be signing a lease before guaranteed funding is coming in? I know they said that supposedly this isn't supposed to cost the taxpayers of Wicomico County any money. That's what we've been told. I don't know whether that's true or not. Apparently it was not supposed to cost us anything. Then it was revealed that, well, it will be costing us administrative time. And we all know that administrative time can be quite costly sometimes.
And what is administrative time?
Yeah. You know, another question, and then we have the attorney in the room. So, Paul, you want to come up? I got a question. Put you right on the spot.
To the left.
Before I
Aren't you glad you stayed at home?
Before I embarrass myself like I did earlier tonight, how much of a role was the council play in this?
Well, certainly a lease for more than a year, the council has to approve it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
How about accepting the grants and doing the, distribution of the funding? I guess that's a good way to put it. How much of a role do we have in that?
If it's a grant to Wicomico County, typically that's accepted through the budget process, I believe.
So we would have to approve that, Council?
I would think so.
Yeah, right. We think so, or are we sure?
I can always check and be sure.
Well, we've had the grants, like the Pirates Wharf and so forth, we've had to approve those.
The difference between that, though, is because that grant wasn't included in the annual budget. If it was, then you approve it through the budget process. If it's not in the budget, then you approve it by resolution separately.
Well, to tie it into our last subject, the CIP, this is a capital project at Poplar Hill that's not in the CIP. So that's, you know, the two joined together. It'd be nice to have some clarity on that. So if the 5-year CIP has nothing for Poplar Hill that I saw in my review. I mean, maybe I missed it. It's a big document. And so, you know, how does that mesh with these plans? It would have been nice to have that. I mean, I don't know. That's a question. So I don't expect you to answer that. You know the law, not the capital budget. That's a rhetorical question, I guess. So.
Mr. Joey said that we won't be responsible for the funding, but if you look back in there, it said they're looking for people to run it, and they're going to be under contract. I mean, that contract's going to be through the county, so the county's going to be the funding source.
Right. And I was asked the other day, and I forgot to check, but someone asked me if there was a want ad on the county website for that Poplar Hill facility. Is anybody aware of that? I didn't check.
Do you mean an RFP?
It sounded like they were saying there was a position requested, not an RFP, unless that was the contract for.
No,
I
someone
can-
that's gonna run it.
There's a RFQ, it's called. It's a request for qualifications.
Yeah.
Right.
For,
So they are
uh,
looking for somebody.
Yeah, but for firm to design, operate, and maintain the facility.
And who's paying for that?
They're gonna
Well,
run the contract.
those services would, I mean, it's an RFQ by the county.
Yeah.
And the idea is that the county would pay for at least some of these services. Now, where the money would come from, grants, I mean, the source of funds is a different matter. But the payee, I think, would be the county.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the concern was, especially after we were told that it's not going to cost the county taxpayers nothing.
Correct that, the payor, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I got you.
I was absent that day in law school.
And, you know, I guess maybe the thought, in theory, would be that it'd be contracted out to some group that might be able to manage one of these things, but from what I understand, again, maybe I'm wrong, but it can't be clarified, that there's been no talk with some of these private organizations that run these things. So, again, we don't know what's going on. We get questions, and I want to have an open mind about this. You know, it's in my part of the county, it's in District 2. You know, I receive questions, but I do recognize the need for treatment. I mean, I think all of us recognize the need to deal with the opioid epidemic, and it'd be nice to have a collaborative working arrangement where you have the private providers, the executive branch, and the council, and the community all working together. Instead, no one's being talked to, and we're reading in the newspaper about this, and we get questions, we say, well, we don't know, and then we have work sessions, and we don't get any answers, and it's outrageous.
Well, some of the things I found out, you know, we were told at the legislative breakfast, I believe it was, that this project would only include people from Wicomico County and the Lower Shore.
Right.
A regional operation. The state was gonna pay for it, the county was gonna kinda, I guess, administrate it or whatever, but apparently there was a meeting a couple weeks ago in Annapolis where, a gentleman, that's in charge of the opioid epidemic process,
Mr. Shu?
Mr. Shu, I think his name is, he was asked a question whether if the state funded this, would the county be able to limit who went to it? And he said he didn't think that would be legal. You know, being it was gonna be state funded, that, you know, anybody from the state would be able to attend this rehabilitation facility. And I think that's one of the biggest concerns. I've talked to some local law enforcement officers, I've talked to some citizens. There's some hesitation. I think everybody knows, like Mark said, that we have an opioid problem, and Bob stepped out and had some meetings, which was a good thing with the community. And there's said that there needs to be more treatment facilities available. But what I'm hearing from citizens in Wicomico County is that bringing people in from the other side of the state, the other side of the bay, is going to be detrimental. And as far as meetings, we really have never had any public hearings with the people that live on the West Marks District area or whatever to see if there's concerns about locating this here. So,
Well, and to go off that, and Paul, I mean, I don't think you're taking any
you
of
gonna
these
be our
comments.
messenger, Paul?
Yeah. I'm listening. No, I mean, I don't think of these, this isn't directed at you, any of these frustrations. I hope you understand that. But on that legal issue, I guess since you are an attorney and you're here, have you looked into that legal issue about if the state is providing the money for it? I don't know, I guess even if Wicomico can't, I mean, how is, you know, we've been told to be for the Lower Shore folks, you know, for the needs we have in the community here. Can it be limited to that under state law, or if, you know, the state's doing it, then it's wide open for, you know, it's a state facility, you know, anybody across, I mean, is that something you've looked into, or could you shed light on that?
Yeah, I have not looked at that issue. What I know about this project is that it's in formative stages. And there's not a lot of concrete information to bring.
There's a lot more information than we're being told.
That could be.
Believe me. And, you know, I've been out talking to some of the people that are in these treatment, not in it, not clients in it, but people that run them. And the word is out about a lot of things this is supposed to be, you know. And You know, some of them say it's laughable, you know, it's not gonna work where it's at, it's not set up right, you know, what is it, what's the word they use, the formula, the pilot, I guess, or you know, how treatment is done in other areas, you know, this is more like a detention type center. You know, I brought it up a few months ago about why don't we use our detention center, because we have 200 and some empty beds or 100 and some empty beds out there. Why don't we use a detention center if we have this problem and use a wing of it? Well, I was told then that it was not the right atmosphere, you know, as a detention center. Well, what are we doing? We're going to another detention center or something that's set up like a detention center. I also asked somebody that was in the business, I guess, to say about the co-ed situation down there. And that really brought some smiles to everybody's face. You know, when you try to do a co-ed situation at a rehab facility, especially in the rural area that it is. So that was an interesting part of a conversation. But, you know, it seems as though the state really wants this, and I've been told that the governor wants it. And I've talked to some of our legislators, and they really want it. And it really, if you look at this, the state wants it, our legislators want it, the state owns the facility. Why don't we ask the state to just take it and run it? Why is the county involved in this, other than we know it's needed? We can support the idea of the project, and maybe we should contact our legislators and let them know that, hey, let's let the state do this.
That would have been my next statement.
If we're going to do it at that location.
Agreed. The same thing I was thinking.
That might be careful what you wish for, Joe.
Well, I'm not happy that it's, you know, I'm not happy that it's going there with the fact that they're going to be bringing people from other areas to Wicomico County. That's not.
I agree.
That's not what we're looking for. There was suggestions made about other facilities in Wicomico County at the legislative breakfast. Apparently, that didn't work out. But
and why does it have to be Wicomico County?
Well, that's a good question too.
Easton's midway.
Yeah. That's a good question too, Larry. But the other matter of fact, if they're going to use that facility and the state owns it, our health department's state-run, let
them take it.
Well,
so, anyway.
I don't think I have quite as strong feelings as some of the other council members. I'm more, you know, I'd like some answers, you know, I mean, and I think a lot of people would like some answers on this, and you know, the public is hearing about this, and the public has questions, and so that's, you know, for me, it's just a disappointment that we can't get some of those answers in a public forum and have a nice civil discussion about this. And instead, we have to sit here and express frustration and, you know, over things that you know, could have shed some light on this and move forward in a productive way. And so that's, you know, you know, I'm speaking purely for myself here, but it is exceptionally disappointing that we have to have this, you know, discussion from this side of the table.
Well, just to sum it up, yeah, I think the main point is, we need information. Everyone needs information.
Exactly. The
Yeah,
public,
I mean,
too.
nothing, you know, we can't make decisions, 'cause, you know, the public doesn't know the gist of this. And at the same time, I don't think our county knows either, you know, because it is, like Mr. Wilbur said, it is early on, but the main point is, I think to come out of this, or to communicate to the executive offices, everyone needs information. Information is what we're looking for.
And something that's been bothering me, like Councilman Holloway started on, was the cost. And I read in that article again yesterday about the 8 million or whatever, and it's going to end up costing millions. And if the state's going to invest this money, we have to sign a lease agreement, is what they're asking for. What happens if the state bails out next year and we've got patients in there?
County's
Who's
gonna
going to
foot
carry
the
the
bill.
lease?
We're gonna foot the bill.
That's right.
Same thing with the Shorebird Stadium. Have they funded us the money for that? The state? We haven't even received the money for that.
We can't seem to even keep the nursing home afloat in the right kind of direction here. We want to take on another facility like that, so anyway.
We're spinning our wheels.
Any other comments?
Would it make any sense to advise the state of the council's general view on this?
our concerns.
Or perhaps have Mr. Shu come down and discuss it.
I think it's too early. Let's wait till after the next meeting and see if we get information.
See, we were hoping, yeah, I mean, Bob, we were hoping that the council really doesn't have enough information to even, I think, state an educated position on this. We're working in a vacuum here. But I appreciate your
The
suggestion.
problem is, John, and it's like I asked Paul, you know, what role does the council play? Will it be somehow locked into where we have to do something, the lease being signed with an agreement that we have to do something? You know, could that happen, Paul?
I think any lease would be for longer than a year, so it would have to come through the council.
Well, I think there's been leases signed in the county for less than a year at some points in times just to get things done. I think that's happened at the airport a time or so, you know, I believe. You know, well, you know.
I don't think that the state would entertain Poplar Hill on a less than a year basis.
Yeah, Mr. Strasburg had mentioned at the legislative breakfast, actually, that it would be a 20-year lease. That helps.
Any other questions, comments?
No.
Next item we have on the agenda, the letter of support for,
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah.
thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilbur.
Letters of support for 4 bills that I think you should be aware of at this time. And the only one you may need a little information on is the letter E, which is the eviction procedures in Wicomico County. Does anyone have any questions on any of these 5 bills?
I've got something to add on. Maybe we need to do 6 letters. The minimum wage, I think the Chamber of Commerce sent a request, you know, that people would oppose the increase in the minimum wage. I think that would be very detrimental to the county and the employment in the county. And I don't know whether we want to get into sending a letter of opposition to that.
Well, I remember a couple of years ago when it was being discussed, Mr. Strasburg actually had figures on how it would affect Wicomico County. It would be interesting, you know, because of our pay scale, you know, we have jobs that are under $15 an hour. It would be interesting to know how much, you know, that would, if we're going to do a letter like that, to get a cost estimate for the county. I'm not opposed to your idea. I'm saying it'd be helpful if we got.
That was just for county employees.
Yeah,
Correct?
yeah. That's what I'm talking about, you know,
Yeah.
we could talk about the economic impact, but I
Right.
mean, you know, if we're writing as a county government, it would be good to have those numbers and say, we have this is the X amount of dollars we're looking at from this year going forward. So if we're gonna do that, maybe we should wait and get that information.
If we can get cooperation from the county executive.
So maybe, Joe, in order to consider it, and I don't know what our time frame might be, usually it's always, you know, within 2 days when you're talking about the state legislature, but I would think we'd have to have some type of information from the Chamber of Commerce, information from SWED, and maybe even information from Beacon, because you want to look at what the impact's going to be on businesses, but I think we also need to make sure that we're evaluating what the benefit might be to the, to the average person in Wicomico County, should this come into play. It could be, I'm not advocating for it at all, but, there could be some where we have to take a balanced approach and say, well,
Benefits that
is
they
it going to
might
be,
lose their job.
is it going to be great, or is it, how do you weigh the pros and the cons of this? And maybe Beacon can help us with that evaluation through, I'm sure this isn't the first time they've evaluated the impact of minimum wage in Wicomico County. If we look at those three resources.
And these are a little bit different because these are local bills we're talking about tonight.
Right.
Specific,
I understood.
right?
Yes, yeah.
So
I just
like
brought up the other because we did get the email
Yeah,
from
that's
the
right,
local
yeah.
chamber.
Right.
But I think with John's point, we always have to be so quick, I think they want these letters soon, don't they, to get the process moving?
Yes, they're asking for these, they're asking for these letters of support
Because if we
now.
don't sign on, they essentially go nowhere,
Well, there's a good chance I think they're probably gonna go through anyway, but I thought it would be.
They're moving forward whether we
Yeah.
sign on or not.
Right. So I just thought it would be
They're
good,
not
that
sponsored by.
if council would want to get letters of support out for these. Everybody okay with this?
When do we get a?
I'll just say this, I'm okay with it, but, I just don't want it to be a precedent. I'm always a little hesitant sometimes, with state bills, providing letters of support. I know even previous councils, we've had this discussion before.
Sure.
You know, it can be a slippery slope sometimes. I mean, these are somewhat obvious bills. I think they're pretty easy to support from a local level. So, I mean, I'm pretty comfortable with these, but, you know, there's certainly other bills that won't be so, maybe as easy as what these are.
Yeah, I'd add on to that. I served as a legislative assistant and the chair of the Education, Health, Environmental Affairs Committee for a couple of years. And a lot of times we get counties that would send up a letter of support. By the time they did so, the bill had already been amended and changed, and it didn't reflect what they really wanted it to be. So we always have to be careful in those kind of situations, because it could change quite quickly.
I guess maybe what you're suggesting is that any letter of support should probably emphasize that we support this,
As written or
as written, what would the term be? Yeah,
As introduced, maybe?
without amendments or something to the effect of, I don't know how they legalese that. Mr. Wilbur, you may know something as far as how you can legislatively say it tactfully, like, we're in support of it, but as long as it doesn't get amended
Yeah.
or.
Just say as introduced.
As introduced.
Yeah.
There you go, look at that. As introduced. Okay, are we good?
That works.
Is there, we have a consensus? Okay. So at this time, entertain a motion to adjourn so we can go into closed session. Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.